Greetings and welcome to the void of structure that is my channel, where 10 minutes ago I decided I felt like making a video, and in a stunning lack of preparedness, my apartment is a mess, my quarantine hair is a mess, and I couldn't even find the game that I wanted to talk about. So instead, today we're looking at Stuart Little 2. Now this piece of shovelware comes from a precious time in my life where I played video games, not because they were good, but because they were the only ones that I had. This particular one comes from a set that my parents got me from a bargain bin at a department store. Is it actually good? I don't remember getting past like the second level as a child, so I'm not qualified to answer that question, but let's find out. So, with no further ado, I bring you Stuart Little 2. Let's talk about some of this game's quirks. Now, I hope you like this music because you're going to be hearing it a lot. Now, don't get me wrong, this game does have other tracks in some levels, but there seems to be some sort of glitch where anytime you play a minigame or just seemingly at random, the game will switch back to this default track and then continue playing it for the entire rest of the level that you are on. Now, this is a collectathon platformer game, and it handles surprisingly well for a PS1 game. It came out in 2003, so definitely at the tail end of the system's life, but the graphics actually look alright, and notably the performance was quite solid. The only time I noticed some significant frame rate drops was in one of the mini-games. Other than that, it ran just fine. But despite the game looking pretty decent, it sort of falls flat in the sound department. Like I mentioned earlier, there's that issue where the game will keep playing the same asinine track over and over until its patronizingly whimsical melody drowns your mind and soul in madness. But generally speaking, the mixing and sound effects can be pretty unpleasant at times too. Just take a listen to the sound that Stuart Little makes when he double jumps. Now, Stuart is a mouse. He has a tiny, squeaky, cute, little high-pitched mouse voice. But every time he double jumps, which is all the time, by the way, it sounds more like someone's middle-aged dad went to a bowling alley and tried to throw the ball overhand and threw his shoulder out. There are a few mechanics in this game that sort of went underutilized. For example, there's tail-whipping buttons that were shown in the tutorial. Now, I can only recall maybe 4 instances in the entire game where this was actually used, and when it is used, the action that pressing the button causes just usually doesn't make sense. Take, for instance, this cooler in the park level. It's on the side of the cooler. One would think that it would perhaps open said cooler. Let's take a look at what actually happens. That's right, pushing the button on the side of the cooler causes pillars of sand to erupt halfway across the room. What else would it do? Another mechanic that barely gets used throughout the game is crawling under things. There's usually only 1 or 2 spots to do it in each level, and there's never anything more than a goldfish or a video clip to find there. What I find really interesting, though, is that in the tutorial, it teaches us that we can press the square button to defend ourselves by throwing a berry or something. And this is where I see the game's biggest missed opportunity. Now, stay with me here. Imagine, okay? Just imagine a playable Doom clone inside Stuart Little 2 for the PlayStation 1. Tell me that would not be the most amazing thing ever. Now, I know it might sound like I'm kind of ragging on this game, but overall, it's a pretty competent little 3D platformer. It's just all the interesting stuff that sticks out happens to be negative. You might have picked up that the game sort of has a big problem contextualizing what's happening in it. And I know it's a kid's game, but as an adult playing through it, it's pretty jarring. For example, it plays these full motion video cutscenes when you go to and from the level select screen, and most of them don't fit in at all.
We're gonna play like Brazilians.
They are actually pretty entertaining because they seem to be taken from a rough cut of the movie, and none of them have music in it, and it's just super awkward, which makes it funny to watch in a way. And the way that they're presented is, like I said, just jarring. There's no context around them. Most of the time they have nothing to do with the level that they are introducing. And actually, they're played out of sequence for the most part. For example, when you're about to enter the penultimate level with the back alleys in the street for the first time, the game decides to play a cutscene where Stuart Little meets Margalo for the first time. And Margalo has been in this game since the very beginning tutorial. It makes no sense to introduce her now, and it's just confusing. At one point, she gets kidnapped, and then as soon as the cutscene ends, she's just standing there right next to Stuart Little explaining how something works. There's just no continuity to these FMVs. The game is weirdly inconsistent about when it feels like explaining its own logic to you. For example, it goes out of its way to tell you that when you get 60 goldfish, the cat is able to go and basically barter for a ring using those biscuits, as it calls them. But when you complete a minigame, Margalo just hands you a ring. She's like, good job, here you go, here's your ring. Like, our whole objective is to get these rings, and you're telling me that you just had one sitting on you this whole time? And you were just sitting there watching me suffer through your stupid little skateboarding minigame before you would give it to me? I think Margot just really enjoys watching Stuart Little suffer. That is the hidden subtext of this game. The bird is the predator, and the mouse the prey. There's one type of collectible in this game that just makes no sense to me. Most of them, the game attempts to theme in some way. The goldfish, or cat biscuits as it calls them, are your basic currency. Your health is represented with ice cream and ice cream cones, and even the little projectiles that you can pick up and throw are themed differently in each level. Sometimes it's a berry, sometimes it's a Lego brick. That's a nice touch. But then you pick up one of these.
Excellent hunting, Stuart. You have found a face block.
A face block? A face block. It's just an inexplicable floating cube with Stuart Little's face plastered on each side. Of course, yeah, what else would I possibly need to know? That makes sense. Sure. Okay, the last thing I'm going to complain about is the final boss. Usually this game does a fair deal of hand-holding. There's optional tutorials all over the place. It even has this neat little feature where Margalo will take the camera around the level to show you anything that you might have missed. But when you get to the final boss, there's none of that. It just drops you straight in. No screen with instructions, no tutorial. You're just in your biplane flying around. There's floating batteries and stuff everywhere. I mean, I beat it on my second try just by not flying into walls and then spamming the cross button when it said to, but I have no clue what I actually did to win that one. It was very confusing, and I don't think a child would have understood it. So, overall, not a bad game by any stretch. It does have its share of problems, but I was pleasantly surprised. In fact, I 100%ed almost all of the levels because I was having fun. So, with that in mind, I'm going to give this my overall rating of, not bad, out of 10. And that wraps things up for this video. Will the next one be about video games? Will it even be in the same genre generally? Will this cesspool that is my channel ever find some semblance of consistency? That remains to be seen, but in the meantime, thumbs, comments, subs, you know the drill. Thank you very much for watching. We'll see you in the next one.